is our last field. That was my last pass. And this is me being very happy. Can't you tell? Alright guys, let's take a look at this New Holland 880 CF 30-foot model draper head. And we're just wrapping up soybeans here, central Wisconsin, and I just thought if someone's interested in a head like this or is looking at one, not familiar with it, we can go over it real quick and I can tell you some of the ins and outs and some of the things I like and some of the things I don't like. First off, let's do a little walk around of this thing. Like I said, this is a 30-foot model, 880 CF draper head, 2015. This has that like egg-shaped reel, which I really like. It also has the center drive system. We'll touch on that a little bit later. We have the in-cab suspension adjustment right here for the cutter bar, which I also really like. We also have the in-cab tilt adjustment. I'm not sure exactly what they call it, but you can tilt it from the cab forward and back. Generally, I just run it all the way back. This up here is your hydraulic reservoir, this entire square tube. We have an expansion tank right under here. We have an hydraulic block with the cutter bar, the sickle speed adjustment, and that is supposed to be just ran wide open. And then we have a draper speed adjustment. You can adjust the speed of the belts. All your pumps, gearboxes, PTO shafts are all on this side. This is obviously a New Holland head on a New Holland combine, so it's got the integrated hookup, single point hydraulics, which is nice. Everything's labeled as far as your belt tightness, so you can adjust your belt tightness pretty easily here and keep an eye on it. As far as the reel goes, that's pretty standard. You got in and out adjustment, up and down adjustments, speed adjustments, and I'll show you some more of that when we get in the cab. Header height sensors, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think there's some on the end. So four header height. This is the flex head model. Flexes pretty nicely. So inside here is the sickle drive. This system isn't updated yet. This is the old system. They come out with an update. I just can't see myself spending $3,000 on a few pieces of metal to update. There's some bearings and stuff they put in here instead of this. But this is a love-hate relationship with this center drive system. I like it, and then at the same time, I hate it. This is hydraulically driven, so there are some good things about that, and there's some bad things about that. And what else? That's kind of like your good walk around. We got sickle height indicators over here and over on this side, which is nice. So when you're setting the head in the field, you can get a good idea of where you're at. It's pretty standard stuff, though. Let me talk about something I don't like here about this center drive system. It's hydraulically driven, and there's not a lot of torque behind that hydraulic motor. So if you get into some tough beans or some tough weeds, like on the edge of a field or in the corner or something, and you hit those green weeds with the entire cutter bar, there's not enough torque to drive the system, and it just stops. So you got to get out, clean everything out, use your tool, get it freed again so you can keep going. So that's that, and it happens probably more than you would think. It gets to be kind of an inconvenience. There's also like a bunch of poly under here that's supposed to keep it clean, which doesn't work very well. I ended up just taking it off this year. Put some rubber belting here to try to keep it clean. Still doesn't stay clean. And the biggest problem I have with this is when you break a section, when you break one of these guys, it really sucks because you have to disassemble this entire thing. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them are connected together here. Disassemble it, take it off, replace your section, put it all back together. And when you're out in the field with limited tools and so on and so forth, it's not a lot of fun. So let's get combining, and you guys can see this thing in action. All right, so just a little background. I've run this head for 5 years on a New Holland machine, and I've learned enough about it. Some of the things that I really like, some of the things I really don't like. Would I buy another one? Possibly, yeah, probably. One of the things I really don't care for is that center drive system. We deal with a lot of rocks in our area. I tend to change guards and signals somewhat often, and whenever one breaks in the middle, which it seems fairly common, it's tough, it's frustrating. And then the gearbox is every time I change the oil, and I do it between every crop, so we have some small grains, we have soybeans. It's always full of moisture, it's always sitting down on the ground in there. Checking the fluid level in that gearbox is really a pain. It's on the back side. It's hard to get the head level. It's somewhat dangerous to even check it. So a lot of my gripes come with that center drive system. Now when it works, it works well. They do have an update kit for the bearings, that slide, everything that connects to the sickle itself. But New Holland wants just an outrageous amount of money for a couple pieces of metal and some bearings, so I refuse to do it. But let's talk about some of the things that I like about it, some of the features that it has. I can use the shift function on here on my multi-function handle. I can just hold the back button, and then I can hold up or down. I can actually lock the cutter bar up into rigid mode just from the cab, which is really nice. Or I can put all the weight of the cutter bar on the ground. So during the day like this, cutting soybeans, I can put a little bit more weight on the cutter bar, and I can shave the ground really, really nicely. This field doesn't have a lot of rocks, so I feel pretty confident I can put some more weight on it, just like this, and the cutter bar moves down, and there's more pressure on it basically. At nighttime in soybeans around here, the dew sets in and things get a little bit tough. Then I can take some weight off of it, put some more float in it, basically more suspension in it, so I don't have that sliding effect that I sometimes get around here when it wants to pick up all the soybean leaves and residue that's on the ground. It'll start to slide with me, and that'll happen, I notice, when I don't have, if I don't take any weight off that system. So, if I keep too much pressure on the ground, then everything starts to slide with me. So it's a really easy adjustment right from the cab. When I start to notice that, just hit my shift function and off we go. Can cut a little bit later. Things work a little bit nicer that way. But I just have to be more careful and more mindful that as we hop over things, it still cuts close to the ground, but there's a lot more bounce to it in suspension, so just gotta be careful and mindful of that. You can also tilt the head forward if you really need to. I don't find myself needing to do that. Every so often, with small grains, they'll get lodged or blown over, and then I can set the head forward like this, and that'll help actually get the reel closer to the ground. And so when the reel is closer to the ground and I put the reel out, I can kind of pick that lodged material up, and I can basically cut it off a little bit nicer. Especially if if all that crop is laying away from me like that, I can pick it up and cut it. It works pretty nice. Other than that, I don't find myself using the tilt function very much. I find myself using that cutter bar suspension quite often and try to dial it in right from the cab, which is really nice. I don't have to get out at all. As far as the reel goes, I like this reel, the way it's shaped. It seems to be a little bit more gentle. We're in some really tall soybeans right now. You can probably hear some of these beans hitting the window. They're very dry. The beans are running 12.5%. So after running this without an air bar for a few years in soybeans, I really think it would benefit from it. Especially if you're not mindful of your reel and where it is. But I do walk behind the machine, and I do check the header for header loss. And I think in soybeans and dry soybeans, this specific head could use an air bar, and it's something I'm considering in the future. Other than that, I like the way the reel flips. It doesn't take a circular motion, if that makes sense. It's kind of designed to grab the crop, bring it in, and then kind of let go of it. So there's not a lot of wrapping involved. The beans don't get wrapped on the reel as much as our previous head did, which was just a regular style. So how does the head float? How does it flex over the terrain that we deal with? We deal with not a lot of real, hilly stuff, or not a lot of valleys or waterways. But we do have a lot of rocky rocky fields, gentle slopes, gentle rolling hill, and it does a really nice job. It's not a real wide head considering, so it does flex very nicely. I've never really had a complaint on how much it flexes and how it shaves the ground. I think it does a really nice job as long as it's set up correctly. And I just have learned to set it up through trial and error and using the owner's manual. It's been pretty straightforward, pretty easy head to operate. I have days with it though. There's days when I just want to throw it in the scrap. But for the most part, I'll take it. So I'm currently in some 2.0 maturity beans. They're running about the mid-60s right now and doing a really nice job cutting them off. Really nice job feeding them in. Probably losing a little bit more beans here because I'm not paying attention like I should. Just with the reel, I should probably pay a little bit more attention because these are very tall, standing really nicely. And I'm just gonna watch here a little bit and try to get this set just right. And I have my reel on the auto reel, so it'll speed up and slow down with my ground speed. It works quite well. As long as you get the parameters in the computer set correctly, it works really nicely. So does it pick up any rocks? Or how do rocks flow into the head? So down at the sickle, it's got a pretty steep transition, to get up to the belts, which is great for rocks. Not so great for short crops, short soybeans, short small grains. I don't deal with the short crops and the small grains as much as I do in soybeans. We have, some pretty low land that just doesn't, some of the soybeans don't get very tall. So how does it feed that in? That's probably another complaint I have. Short crops, it doesn't feed great. I always have to be very aggressive with the reel. I have to be right down there, flipping it pretty fast. So not only do you not pick them up real great, you're breaking the beans open and you're losing some beans because I don't personally think it does a great job with really short crops. Now, we do deal with rocks, like I said. So it does float over the rocks really well, and the rocks will get stuck down on that transition because it's pretty steep to get a rock up there. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, if you know what I mean. It's okay. It's okay in that respect. So what are my biggest complaints with this head? I would say that center drive is by far my biggest complaint on this head, by far. Between changing out a section, a simple section that breaks in the field because of a rock, it takes you 20-30 minutes because you got to disassemble that whole center part. Between the gear fluid always having to be checked and changed, and the moisture that gets in it, those poly, they call them blow-off systems, don't care for that. The way this drives, there's little bearings and little metal stubs that wear out very quickly. Just the nature of the way that's designed. Don't care for that at all. I actually keep a bunch of those on hand because they go out every single year, and that's part of the update kit that they came out with. But not going to go that route quite yet until I get rid of all my parts. Could it use an air bar for a draper? Yes, I think it would benefit a lot from an air bar. Also, one of the things I don't care for is when I pick the head up at the end of the row, and if there's some soybeans laying down on that sickle, because that transition is fairly sharp, it's got a ways to go up, I will lose a few bean stalks down there just because of that. So every so often, you can get your reel, you can put your reel out and pick them up, but boy, to do that every single turn, I don't know. But yeah, there's one thing, we'll lose some beans doing that. Some of the things I really like the belt speed adjustment. I like the reel. I really enjoy the reel, the way it's designed and flips over. You can change the timing on that. The integration with the combine is great. I also like the maintenance part of it. The maintenance is pretty straightforward as far as daily maintenance. There's 2 grease zerks on the center drive system, a couple pumps in there, keep those bearings lubed up. And then every other day I grease the reel, check the chain on the reel, and it's pretty much it. You can walk around this head And it's got level indicators everywhere, so as far as hydraulic fluid, you can look, yep, real quick, and in about 5 minutes you're done doing your walk around and your greasing on this. So pretty straightforward as far as maintenance, kind of like that. Easy to hook and unhook. We have a lot of fields on our farm, so I hook and unhook often. Very easy, very, very easy. A couple minutes, I can drop it, unplug it. I don't have to walk around the head to the other side. There's only one PTO that I need to hook up. Everything's single point, and away I go. Alright guys, well, hopefully you enjoyed that, or you got some information out of it, or it's exactly what you wanted to hear so you don't get one. I don't know. I do want to let you know that I am not paid by New Holland. This is just a head we bought. We do not get anything in return. This is just my honest opinion as a farmer. So take that for what it's worth. But hopefully there's something in there you can find useful, or you just want to watch combines. Either way, I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you next time. I'm going to turn on the Packers and probably listen to them lose. Sorry, Packers. It's not sounding good.
Inside. 6 yards to go. Swap right. Single receiver moving right to the right. Heineke fully loaded shotgun. Samuel to his left.